Hey, glad you're here. We're going to let you in on a little secret to help you for your fantasy football draft. Actually, you know what? How about 10 of them? These are some things that your league mates probably do not know about, and they can definitely come up big helping you on draft day. All right, what's the first secret we want our endgame viewers to know before they draft?
Well, look, Christian McCaffrey is the consensus number one pick this year. And if you get the number one pick and you draft Christian McCaffrey, you're probably thinking maybe it's not a bad idea to handcuff Christian McCaffrey with the backup running back, Elijah Mitchell. We've seen in the past, Elijah Mitchell, anytime Christian McCaffrey goes down, he's been pretty much great when he's been healthy. But that's the thing. Elijah Mitchell isn't healthy. The guy who has been healthy, who's also been impressive in camp, is Jordan Mason. It looks like Jordan Mason is actually going to be the handcuff for Christian McCaffrey this year. And Jordan Mason has been great this preseason. And it's not just the fact that he's been great in preseason. I mean, lots of guys are great in preseason and then do nothing in regular season. It's the fact that Shanahan has been raving about Jordan Mason. And I really think that he is the guy Shanahan is going to go to if something should happen to Christian McCaffrey. So if you're drafting Christian McCaffrey this year, or even if you're not and you want to get an elite handcuff who could be potentially a league winner if something does happen to Christian McCaffrey, you need to take Jordan Mason and actually get that guy.
Secret number two, when you're in the first round, if you're going for a stud wide receiver, you might get a guy like A.J. Brown, and you should be pretty happy with that. But here's the secret. I don't think he's going to be the top wide receiver on his own team. That's right, you can get Devonta Smith a couple of rounds later most of the time, and I really believe he is going to be the number one fantasy receiver on this team because there are some things that are going to change for the better in Smith's favor this season. So first of all, Kellen Moore, new offensive coordinator, that should be good for everybody in Philly, right? This is especially good for Smith because there's going to be a lot more pre-snap motion, which by default has to be more because the Eagles were dead last season in pre-snap motion. They just did not have a creative offense. It's going to change. We know Kellen Moore has gotten a lot of production out of wide receivers wherever he's been. And Devonta Smith is going to be in the slot a lot. Now, I know some people worry Jahan Dotson just went there to Philadelphia. So despite the fact that they just acquired a talented young receiver, this is actually good for Devonta Smith. Jahan Dotson is better on the outside than in the slot, and Devonta Smith is one of the most effective slot receivers, averaging 3.39 yards per route run in the slot. Last year's leader in yards per route run was Tyreek Hill at 4.05. Second place was Nico Collins at 3.37. That would make Devonta Smith one of the most efficient receivers in the league. I really think he explodes this year, and they acquired Dotson to keep Smith in that more effective slot role. So, yeah, A.J. Brown's not a bad pick, but don't be surprised when Devonta Smith is a number one receiver this year. All right, what's another secret that our endgame viewers should know?
I think they need to know about this Bears wide receiver group and how it's going to shake out this year because, all draft season it's been assumed that DJ Moore correctly is the number one wide receiver here, and then Keenan Allen would be the number two, and rookie Odunze would be the number three. But that's not how it looked this preseason. So when you look at this Bears during the preseason, when Caleb Williams was actually on the field, they only ran three wide receiver sets 50% of the time in the first preseason game, 62% of the time in the second preseason game. And we look at the wide receiver snaps of Caleb Williams on the field, Odunze actually had the highest percentage of snaps at 72%. DJ Moore was second at 61%. Keenan Allen was dead last at 59%. So it looks like he is the odd man out here. Also, when you look at target shares, DJ Moore tied for the team lead in target share in the preseason. Odunze tied for third. Keenan Allen way down towards the bottom. In fact, he was tied with DeAndre Swift with a 5.6% target share. I really think Odunze is the number two Bears wide receiver you want in drafts, yet Keenan Allen goes over him in every single draft. So let your league mate take Keenan Allen. Just wait a little bit. Get Odunze. I think he's the wide receiver you want outside of DJ Moore in Chicago.
Well, I'll let you in on another secret. There may be another odd man out in Chicago and on other teams as well. So when you look at snap counts, and PFF's Nathan Janke is great at charting this, he astutely pointed out that Gerald Everett seems to be the leading receiver in terms of tight ends for this team because he was out there more often than Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet's being drafted as kind of a low-end tight end 1 to high-end tight end 2. Gerald Everett's an afterthought. Don't be surprised if Gerald Everett is the one who is out there, gets more targets or at least more run. Cole Kmet is almost undraftable. You know why? Because Gerald Everett is one of those coaches' pets that was brought over by OC Shane Waldron, who worked with him both in the Rams and the Seahawks offenses. And this is something you need to keep an eye out for because there's some other players that might throw a wrench in your fantasy plans. Think about in Buffalo, everyone's all excited about Keon Coleman this year. Maybe Khalil Shakir breaks out, except that Joe Brady brought over Curtis Samuel to steal some work in the slot. And look, he might even steal snaps from James Cook in the backfield. And then, we have to talk about Cordero Patterson in Pittsburgh. Yeah, he's going to vulture some touchdowns from both Najee Harris and Jalen Warren and steal a lot of touches. It's history repeating itself all over again. If you were frustrated with the Falcons offense last year, be prepared for the Steelers this year. And then I don't even know how to describe the Chargers backfield. Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, both brought by Greg Roman from Baltimore. I guess they're sort of vulturing each other, and they're both going to block Kamani Vidal from his breakout unless somebody gets hurt early on. So just be aware that coaches don't always run with the guy you want. They like to go with the guy that they trust. Now, how about a backfield where there won't be any vulturing going on?
That's right. And look, Jerome Ford is a must-draft late-round running back. You got to get this guy. Nick Chubb is going to start the season on the PUP list. Not a surprise here. That means he's out a minimum 4 weeks. But look, they're not talking like, 4 weeks and then he's good to go. Like, there's no timetable for his return. We don't know when we're going to see Nick Chubb. And when we do see Nick Chubb, he's going to need to be eased back into action. He's not going to be ready to go right out of the gate. The only other running backs behind him, Deontay Foreman, just suffered a rib injury in the last preseason game. Don't know the severity, but now he's banged up. Pierre Strong Jr. got a little banged up towards the end of camp. Jerome Ford is going to get so many touches in this Cleveland Browns offense. Even last year, he got 248 touches splitting with Kareem Hunt. And this is one of the best offenses for a running back. They're one of the run-heaviest offenses. They run the most plays of any team, historically over the years. This is a great situation for Jerome Ford, and he's still going outside the top 120 picks on almost every site out there. He's a guy you have to get in the late rounds of your fantasy draft. Even if at some point down the road, Nick Chubb does come back and Jerome Ford becomes nothing more than, in a timeshare, a handcuff, just getting a guy that late who can carry your team 4, 5, 6, 8, however many weeks is worth it. Do you want to win your fantasy league but don't have time to do all the research? Are you tired of drafting mediocre teams and then having to constantly hope you hit it big on the waiver wire just to compete? Do you wish you could have a fantasy expert like Pierre or myself with you while you draft? Well, now you can. With our app Draft Lane and our live draft pilot, we will guide you through every pick of your draft and tell you exactly which players we would pick if we were on the clock. Our proprietary algorithm will take into account your league settings, scoring, and roster requirements to identify the best picks every time you are on the clock to ensure you have a winning team from week one. It's the closest thing you can get to having us there drafting with you. Get the biggest edge in fantasy football. Just go to your app store and search for Draft Lane and download it today and get ready to dominate your draft.
Well, I don't know if this is a secret, but a lot of people don't seem to know. There's some running backs you really don't have to draft, and those are the ones who seem to be lighting it up in the preseason. Sorry to break it to you, but preseason rushing leaders mean absolutely nothing. Look, I want to believe just as much as anybody else that Israel Abanikanda still might have some glimmer of hope of having fantasy value. I really want Frank Gore Jr. to be a stud in the NFL. And of course, there's my guy Cam Akers. But you should not waste a draft pick on any of these guys, maybe not even in best ball. Let me just go back and read to you the list of last year's top 10 running back leaders in fantasy points throughout the preseason. Let's see how well any of these panned out for you. Julius Chestnut, Jaleel McLaughlin, Emmanuel Wilson, Trey Sermon, Chris Brooks, Ernest Johnson, John Kelly, Mike Boone, Savon Ahmed, and Elijah Dotson. How many of those guys are actually still on an NFL squad? And, well, I tell you that out of the top 20 running backs from last year, only 3 of them are even on a roster this year. So no matter who shined, no matter what injuries are going on, these guys are rushing leaders because they are not starters and they're actually playing the preseason. So don't go too deep on your sleeper list, especially at running back. All right, is it possible you have any secrets about tight ends?
Yes, I just called Jerome Ford a must draft. I think Evan Engram is a must draft. Not a late round tight end, but like the non-elite tight ends. Everybody trying to get Sam Laporta this year, Trey McBride, still trying to get Travis Kelce. And look, I like those guys. But you can get Evan Engram later and potentially have the tight end one. In that last preseason game when the starters played, Evan Engram had 2 touchdowns. And okay, it's preseason, like whatever, 2 touchdowns in the preseason. Here's why I think it's significant though. You look at Evan Engram last year, had the most receptions of any tight end, had the 3rd most receiving yards of any tight end, but he had the 12th fewest touchdowns. That's what really held him back from honestly being the tight end one. He was still a top 5 tight end. Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones, they're gone. They took 31 red zone targets with them. They were the top 2 red zone targets in that Jacksonville offense last year. If a good chunk of those red zone targets go to Evan Engram, and this year he gets 8, 9, 10 touchdowns, to go with being one of the leaders at tight end in receptions and receiving yards, he legit has a chance to be the tight end one. And when you look at the other guys here, Christian Kirk, he's not a big red zone threat. Gabe Davis, I don't even know what threat he is. Brian Thomas Jr., I like him, but he's a rookie. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Evan Engram leads the Jaguars in red zone targets and shocks everybody when he scores double-digit touchdowns this year and helps people win leagues. So don't feel like you have to reach on one of those early tight ends. Take the mini discount on Evan Engram. You'll be happy you did.
Well, here's a secret and maybe a shock to you that guy I think could be a league winner at tight end may not even be a starting tight end on his own team. And I'm talking about first round pick Brock Bowers. Why? Because this is a team that is going to use Michael Mayer, guy they drafted early last year, as their traditional starting tight end. Brock Bowers will be exactly what we want him to be, the do everything kind of tight end hybrid. He's going to line up at halfback. He's going to line up in the slot. He's lined up out wide, fullback. He's already been doing this in the preseason. If you saw that Vikings game the other day, it's exactly how you want to see him used. Get in the backfield, play action, catch the ball, and then run with it. They're going to use him in creative ways. This is why they drafted him. Everyone's all confused why they took another tight end, because they're not just going to use him as a regular tight end. He's not going to block. I mean, come on. He can, but that's not why they spent a first-round pick on him. So I'm encouraged by what I've seen. And you know what, Chris, you've been encouraged by the fact that Gardner Minshew out there might actually be good for somebody like Jacoby Myers, get those short passes, because let's face it, that's kind of what Gardner Minshew can do. I think this is good for Brock Bowers. Short, quick passes, not have to rely on down the field accuracy. Brock Bowers is going to take some time to round into shape, but honestly, by the second half, he might be leading this team in targets, especially if Devonta Adams does get traded. All right, I think you have one more draft secret for us.
All right, this is a deep league special for those of you in deeper leagues with deeper benches. Cedric Tillman is actually the Browns wide receiver you want outside of Amari Cooper. This preseason, he had a 100% route participation with the starters. He also had a 30% target share and a 44% air yard share. Now, of course, part of that was Jerry Jeudy's been banged up. Amari Cooper's been a little banged up. But I really think Cedric Tillman is going to be the guy out there in 2 wide receiver sets along with Amari Cooper, not Jerry Jeudy. Now, hopefully nobody is still excited about Jerry Jeudy this year, but he is still getting drafted relatively high, like late rounds. But Cedric Tillman is not even being drafted at all in any leagues. Don't be surprised if Pierre is dropping his week 1 waiver wire video saying, hey, you need to go pick up Cedric Tillman. I really think Cedric Tillman is the number 2 wide receiver in Cleveland. Look, maybe Deshaun Watson never gets back to what he was in Houston, but if he does, that's going to be good for Tillman. Or look, maybe he just never gets healthy, and then we get slinging Jameis Winston, and that'll be great for Cedric Tillman. But either way, if you're in a really deep league and you're looking for like kind of a last round flyer, take a look at Cedric Tillman. I think he's got the number 2 job in Cleveland.
Well, you know, sometimes fantasy studs come from bad teams. Let's look at New England, not expected to be a playoff team this year. So, well, here it comes. You know who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Patriots week 1? I don't know. And head coach Jared Mayo doesn't seem to know either, because every other day he's saying something different. Okay, no matter who it is, how about this? Who is going to be the actual receiver that leads this team in receptions, fantasy points, and all that? It doesn't matter, because I don't want any of them on my fantasy team. This is a mess. This offense is going to be terrible. The offensive line is already showing that it's going to be one of the worst in the league. And you should be very concerned by what you've seen in terms of usage in this preseason. The guy who's been out there the most with the starters is Tyquan Thornton. Do you remember him? Maybe you do. And if you don't, then there's a reason for that. They're trying to resurrect his career. Let's see. Demario Douglas has been banged up. I think he'll be okay, but I don't want okay. KJ Osborne has been getting a lot of run. You remember KJ Osborne? Yeah, he's with New England now. Javon Baker, arguably their most talented receiver, has been running last. And so I just don't want to deal with this. There's not enough upside for any of these players. Look, sometimes the best picks you make are the ones you don't make, avoiding those bad offenses. I already expressed my concern with New England, New Orleans, and Denver. There might be some value on some of those teams, but for the most part, I think the secret is out here that New England is going to be bad. Before you go to your fantasy draft, those are some things that could definitely help you out. But of course, what helps the most? Picking those league winners. You want to know who they are this year? Check this out.